What happens when the most powerful being in the galaxy, a queen who commands fleets that could turn stars to dust, looks across a crowded diplomatic hall and asks you, a simple human maintenance worker, if you're single? Commander Jake Morrison thought his biggest worry was fixing broken air recyclers on humanity's first deep space embassy. He never imagined that changing a light bulb would catch the attention of Queen Zarathia, the immortal ruler of the Nexari Empire, whose species has conquered half the known galaxy. But when she approaches him with eyes like molten gold and a question that stops his heart, Jake realizes that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't plasma cannons or black holes. It's falling for someone whose idea of a romantic evening might involve conquering solar systems together. This is the story of how one human's honest heart and unbreakable spirit caught the attention of the galaxy's most feared ruler, and how their unlikely connection would reshape the balance of power across the stars forever. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his brow as he climbed down from the maintenance ladder, his tool belt clanking against the metal rungs. The diplomatic station's environmental systems have been acting up all week, and as the senior human technician aboard New Geneva Station, it was his job to keep everything running smoothly. He never expected that fixing a faulty atmosphere processor would lead to the most terrifying and confusing moment of his life. The station buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species prepared for the Grand Convergence, a diplomatic gathering that happened only once every 50 years. Jake had been working double shifts to ensure everything was perfect for the event. The last thing humanity needed was for their first major diplomatic hosting to be remembered for broken air, conditioning, or flickering lights. As he rounded the corner toward the main diplomatic hall, Jake nearly dropped his plasma wrench. Through the transparent aluminum viewing panels, he could see the assembled delegates, but his eyes were immediately drawn to one figure who dominated the room despite standing perfectly still. Queen Zarathia of the Nexari Empire stood nearly 8 feet tall, her iridescent blue-black skin seeming to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Her elongated cranium was adorned with a crown of what looked like living crystal pulsing with soft purple light. Her arms moved with fluid grace as she gestured during conversation, each ending in hands that possessed an extra finger. But it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention, molten gold irises that seemed to hold the wisdom and weariness of millennia. The Nexari were legendary across the galaxy. They had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years when humans were still figuring out agriculture. Their empire stretched across 17 sectors, encompassing hundreds of worlds and countless species. Queen Zarathia herself was rumored to be over 3,000 years old, having ruled for longer than human civilization had existed. Jake tried to move past the viewing panel without being noticed, but something impossible happened. Those golden eyes turned directly toward him, and he felt as if she was looking straight through the walls, past his work clothes and grease-stained hands, directly into his soul. Their eyes met through the transparent barrier, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. For a moment that stretched like eternity, the most powerful being in the galaxy was looking at him, really looking at him. Not past him, not through him, but directly at him with an intensity that made his heart race. Then she smiled. It wasn't the political smile Jake had seen her wear during the diplomatic footage he'd watched while preparing the station. This was something else entirely, curious, amused, and strangely warm. She said something to her aide, a smaller Nexari with silver markings, never breaking eye contact with Jake. Panic flooded through him. Had he done something wrong? Was there a security breach he'd caused by being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Jake quickly looked around for an escape route, but before he could move, the aide was walking toward the exit of the diplomatic hall. Jake's mind raced. This was bad. Very bad. Humans were still the newest species to join the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago. They were on probation, essentially proving they could be trusted with the responsibilities that came with galactic citizenship. If he had somehow offended the queen of the Nexari Empire, it could be a diplomatic disaster. He tried to disappear into the crowd of station personnel, but his human appearance made him stand out among the mostly alien crew. The Nexari aides spotted him within minutes, gliding through the corridor with the effortless grace of his species. Human technician, The aide spoke in perfect Standard Galactic, his voice carrying the melodic undertones characteristic of Nexary speech. Her Imperial Majesty, Queen Zerathia, requests your presence. Jake's mouth went dry. I think there's been some mistake. I'm just maintenance crew. I fix things. The aide's large, multifaceted eyes regarded him with what might have been amusement. There is no mistake. Her Majesty was quite specific. She wishes to speak with a human male with the kind eyes who carries tools of repair. This couldn't be happening. Jake looked around desperately, hoping to see his supervisor or anyone who might be able to handle the situation better than he could. But the corridor had somehow emptied, leaving him alone with the Nexary aide who waited with infinite patience. I should probably change, Jake said weakly, looking down at his oil-stained coveralls. And maybe shower. Her Majesty is waiting. The aide replied simply, which Jake interpreted as a polite but firm no. The walk back to the diplomatic hall felt like a march to his own execution. Jake tried to remember everything he'd been taught about Nexary customs during his brief cultural orientation. Don't make direct eye contact unless invited. Keep your hands visible. Never interrupt. Show respect through posture. The list went on, but his mind was too scattered to remember half of it. The diplomatic hall fell silent as they entered. Representatives from dozens of species turned to watch the strange sight of a human maintenance worker being escorted through their midst. Jake felt heat rising in his cheeks as conversations stopped mid-sentence. Queen Zerathia stood at the center of the room, and up close, she was even more magnificent than he had imagined. Her presence filled the space around her like a physical force. The crystalline crown caught the light and cast rainbow patterns across her features. Her forearms were adorned with intricate jewelry that seemed to move and shift on its own. But it was still her eyes that captured him. When she looked at him directly, Jake felt like he was standing at the edge of a vast ocean, simultaneously terrified and mesmerized. "Approach," she said, and her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Jake's legs somehow carried him forward until he stood before her. At his full 6-foot height, he barely reached her shoulder. This close, he could see that her skin wasn't simply blue-black, but contained swirls of deeper colors that moved like slow currents beneath the surface. "Your name," she commanded, but somehow it didn't feel harsh coming from her. "Jake Morrison, Your Majesty," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maintenance Technician, 2nd Class, New Geneva Station." She tilted her head, studying him with an expression he couldn't read. "Jake Morrison," she repeated, and his name sounded different in her voice, like music. "Tell me, Jake Morrison, what do you repair?" The question was so unexpected that Jake answered honestly without thinking. "Whatever's broken, Your Majesty. Environmental systems, mostly, but also communications arrays, power distribution networks, and sanitation systems when things get really exciting." A sound escaped her that might have been laughter. Several of the nearby diplomats shifted nervously, clearly not expecting humor in this interaction. "And do you enjoy this work?" she asked. Jake blinked, confusion replacing some of his fear. Yes, Your Majesty. I mean, it's not glamorous, but there's something satisfying about taking something that doesn't work and making it work again. Keeping things running so other people can do their jobs." She nodded slowly, as if this answer pleased her. "You fix things that are broken so others may thrive. This is honorable work." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Jake said, though he still had no idea where this conversation was going. Queen Zerathia stepped closer, and Jake caught a scent like ozone and starflowers. Her golden eyes seemed to pierce right through him, weighing and measuring something he couldn't understand. "Tell me, Jake Morrison, who fixes broken things?" she said, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent diplomatic hall. "Are you unattached, human?" The question hit Jake like a physical blow. He heard gasps from several directions and was dimly aware that someone dropped something that shattered on the floor. But his entire world had narrowed to those golden eyes and the impossible question hanging in the air between them. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. Could you repeat that?" Jake asked weakly, certain he had misheard. Her smile widened, revealing teeth that were slightly sharper than human normal, but somehow only made her more beautiful. "I asked if you were unattached, unmated." Available for courtship. The diplomatic hall erupted in whispers, but Jake barely heard them. His mind was completely blank except for one thought repeating over and over. The Queen of the Nexary Empire just asked him if he was single. "Ah, yes," he managed to squeak out. "Excellent," Queen Zarathia said with satisfaction. "Then, you will join me for the evening meal. We have much to discuss." Jake's world tilted sideways. This was definitely not covered in the maintenance manual. As chaos erupted around them, diplomats frantically consulting their aides and communication devices, Jake found himself staring up at the most powerful being in the galaxy, who was looking at him like he was the most interesting thing in the universe. His life had just become infinitely more complicated. Jake stood in his small quarters aboard New Geneva Station, staring at his reflection in the mirror with growing panic. In 3 hours, he was supposed to have dinner with Queen Zarathia of the Nexary Empire. His entire wardrobe consisted of work coveralls, a few casual shirts, and one dress uniform that he'd worn exactly twice since being assigned to the station. The dress uniform would have to do. A chime at his door interrupted his spiral of anxiety. Jake opened it to find Commander Sarah Chun, the station's diplomatic liaison, looking frazzled and slightly out of breath. "Morrison, what the hell did you do?" she demanded, pushing past him into his quarters. "I fixed an atmospheric processor," Jake replied weakly. "Don't be cute. The Queen of the Nexary Empire just requested a private dinner with you. The Galactic Council is in an uproar. 3 different species have filed formal inquiries about potential treaty implications. The Zephyrian ambassador thinks this might be some kind of human conspiracy to gain political advantage." Jake sank into his desk chair. "Commander, I swear I have no idea what's happening. I was just doing my job when she saw me through the viewing panel. Next thing I know, her aide is escorting me to the diplomatic hall, and she's asking if I'm single." Commander Chin stopped pacing and stared at him. "She asked if you're single?" Her exact words were, "Are you unattached, human?" in front of half the diplomatic corps. Chun ran her hands through her hair. "This is unprecedented. Nexary royalty doesn't socialize with other species, let alone..." She gestured at Jake, maintenance technicians. "Thanks for the confidence boost. You know what I mean. Jake, the Nexary are the oldest and most powerful spacefaring civilization in the known galaxy. Their queens are practically immortal. They don't date outside their species, and they certainly don't date humans they've known for 5 minutes." Jake's door chimed again. This time it was DR. Elena Vasquez, the station's xenobiologist and cultural specialist, carrying a datapad and looking excited. "Morrison, I've been researching Nexary courtship customs since the announcement. This is fascinating." "Announcement?" Jake asked weakly. "Oh yes, it's all over the diplomatic networks. Queen Zarathia formally announced her intention to court you to the entire Galactic Council." Jake's legs gave out, and he collapsed back into his chair. "She what?" Dr. Vasquez consulted her datapad enthusiastically. "According to Nexary custom, when a member of the royal family expresses romantic interest, they must announce it publicly to ensure transparency and prevent political manipulation. It's actually quite romantic in their culture." "Romantic?" Commander Chun said incredulously. "This could cause a diplomatic incident." "Actually," Dr. Vasquez continued, "it could be the opposite. Nexary take courtship very seriously. If Queen Zarathia is genuinely interested in Jake, it would be considered a great honor to humanity. Refusing her would be the diplomatic incident." Jake's mouth fell open. "Refusing her? I haven't even figured out how to accept her yet." DR. Vasquez sat down across from him. "Jake, what do you know about Nexary biology and culture?" They're tall, they have 4 arms, and they've been conquering the galaxy since before humans invented the wheel. They're also highly empathic," Dr. Vasquez explained. "Nexary can sense emotional resonance in other beings. They're drawn to what they call life harmony. Essentially, they can feel when someone has a pure heart and strong spirit. It's why they've been able to maintain such a stable empire for millennia. They choose leaders and partners based on character, not politics." Commander Chin frowned. "Are you saying she can read his mind?" "Not exactly. More like she can sense his fundamental nature. Nexary royalty are especially sensitive to this. If Queen Zarathia is interested in Jake, it's because she sensed something in him that resonated with her." Jake stood up and began pacing. "This is insane. Yesterday, my biggest worry was whether the water recycling system could handle the increased diplomatic load. Now I'm apparently being courted by an alien queen who can read my soul. The dinner is in 2 hours, Commander Chin said. We need to prepare you. The next hour was a blur of cultural briefings, etiquette lessons, and wardrobe adjustments. Dr. Vasquez explained Nexary dining customs while Commander Chin drilled him on diplomatic protocol. The dress uniform was deemed acceptable after some minor adjustments. Remember, Dr. Vasquez said as they walked toward the diplomatic dining hall, Nexary value honesty above all else. Don't try to be something you're not. She asked you to dinner because of who you are, not who you think she wants you to be. And don't cause an interstellar incident, Commander Chin added helpfully. The diplomatic dining hall had been reconfigured for the occasion. Instead of the usual long conference table, a smaller, more intimate setting had been arranged near the viewing ports that showed the star field beyond. Queen Zarathia was already there, and Jake's breath caught when he saw her. She had changed from her formal diplomatic robes into something that was somehow both elegant and approachable. The crystalline crown was gone, replaced by a simple circlet that allowed her natural features to show through. Her 4 arms moved gracefully as she examined a star chart displayed on the table surface. When she looked up and saw him, that smile returned, the genuine one that made his heart skip. Jake Morrison, she said, rising to her full imposing height. You look very handsome in your formal attire. Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks. Thank you, Your Majesty. You look incredible. She gestured for him to sit, and Jake was relieved to see that the chairs had been adjusted to account for their height difference. As he settled in, he noticed they were alone except for a single Nexary attendant who stood discreetly by the wall. I hope you do not mind the privacy, Queen Zarathia said. I thought it best we speak without the entire diplomatic corps analyzing our every word. I appreciate that, Jake said honestly. I have to admit, I'm way out of my depth here. Good, she said, surprising him. I prefer honesty to false confidence. A series of dishes arrived, carried by silent serving staff who seemed to glide rather than walk. Jake recognized none of the food, but everything smelled incredible. Queen Zarathia noticed his hesitation. Would you prefer human cuisine? I can arrange. No. Jake interrupted, then caught himself. I mean, thank you, Your Majesty, but I'd like to try Nexary food, if that's okay. She smiled again, and Jake was beginning to realize that each smile was slightly different, conveying different emotions. This one seemed pleased. This is Kithera fruit, she said, indicating a dish that looked like crystallized starlight. And this is roasted Nelvan grain. Both are considered delicacies on my homeworld. Jake tried the fruit first and was surprised by the burst of flavors, sweet and tart with an effervescent quality that made his mouth tingle. This is amazing. I am pleased you enjoy it. Queen Zarathia ate with elegant efficiency, using all 4 hands in a complex dance that was mesmerizing to watch. Tell me about your work, Jake Morrison. What draws you to fixing broken things? The question seemed genuinely curious, not like small talk. Jake found himself answering honestly. I grew up on Earth, in a place where things broke down a lot. My dad was a maintenance worker in a manufacturing plant, and he taught me that everything has a purpose, even when it's not working right. He used to say that broken things just needed someone to care enough to understand what they were supposed to do. Queen Zarathia listened intently. And you carried this philosophy to the stars. I guess so. When I joined the space program, I found out that the same principles apply whether you're fixing a water pump in Michigan or an atmosphere processor on a space station. Everything has a function, and when that function is compromised, you just need to figure out why and fix it. A noble pursuit, she said thoughtfully. On my world, we have a saying, the one who mends the broken fabric strengthens the whole tapestry. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and Jake was surprised to find his nervousness fading. Queen Zarathia was intimidating, certainly, but she was also surprisingly easy to talk to. Can I ask you something, Your Majesty? Jake said finally. You may, and please call me Zara. We are not in formal council. Zara. Jake repeated, testing the name. It felt strange, but not wrong. Why me? I mean, you're the queen of an interstellar empire. You could have dinner with anyone in the galaxy. Why a human maintenance worker you've never met? Zara set down her eating utensil and regarded him seriously. Do you know what I sensed when I first saw you through that viewing panel? Jake shook his head. Peace, she said simply. Not emptiness, not absence, but genuine peace. Do you know how rare that is, Jake Morrison? I have ruled for 3,000 years. I have met billions of beings from hundreds of species. Most carry anger, fear, ambition, greed, or desperation. But you? She paused, searching for words. You carry purpose without aggression, contentment without complacency, strength without the need to prove it. Jake stared at her, overwhelmed. I don't feel particularly peaceful, especially not right now. Zara's laughter was like music. Right now, you are nervous because you are out of your familiar environment. But your fundamental nature remains unchanged. You are someone who builds rather than destroys, who serves others without seeking glory, who finds satisfaction in honest work. Those aren't exactly rare qualities, Jake protested. Aren't they? Zara asked softly. In 3 millennia of rule, I have met perhaps a dozen beings who possess them all in such measure, and none who combine them with such accessibility. Accessibility? You make it easy to be around you, Jake Morrison. You ask for nothing, expect nothing, and somehow give everything simply by being yourself. Jake felt something warm spreading in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite name. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It is simply the truth as I perceive it. They continued talking through several more courses, and Jake found himself relaxing completely. Zara asked about his life on Earth, his journey to the stars, his dreams and fears. In return, she told him about her homeworld, about the weight of ruling an empire, about the loneliness of immortality. As the evening wound down, Jake realized something that shocked him. He didn't want it to end. This incredible, powerful, beautiful being had somehow become just Zara, someone he enjoyed talking to, someone who made him laugh, someone he wanted to know better. I should probably go, he said reluctantly, as the serving staff cleared the last dishes. You must have important diplomatic business. The most important business of any being is connection with others, Zara said, rising gracefully. This evening has been illuminating. For me too, Jake said honestly. Zara stepped closer, and Jake caught that scent of ozone and starflowers again. Jake Morrison, would you do me the honor of allowing me to court you properly? Jake's heart hammered in his chest. Yes, he said without hesitation. Yes, I would like that very much. Zara's smile could have powered the station's main reactor. Excellent. Tomorrow, I will show you something few beings have ever seen. As Jake walked back to his quarters, his mind spinning with everything that had happened, he realized his life had just taken a turn he never could have imagined. And for the first time in a long time, he couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. Jake woke up the next morning convinced he had dreamed the entire evening. Then, he saw the small crystalline flower sitting on his nightstand. A gift Zara had given him as they parted, saying it would bloom in the presence of compatible life energy. The flower was glowing softly with warm purple light. His door chimed, and Jake found Commander Chun waiting outside with a grim expression and a steaming cup of coffee. We need to talk, she said, pushing past him into his quarters. Good morning to you too, Sarah. The Galactic Council is an emergency session. 3 different species have formally objected to your courtship with Queen Zerathia. Jake accepted the coffee gratefully. Objected? On what grounds? The hegemony thinks it's a human plot to gain political advantage. The Zephyrians are claiming it violates some ancient treaty about royal bloodlines. And the Krolix are just generally offended that a lesser species is involved with Nexury royalty. Lesser species? Jake felt a flash of anger. Their words, not mine. But Jake, there's something else. Dr. Vasquez discovered something in her research last night. Something that changes everything. Before Jake could ask what she meant, his door chimed again. This time it was Zara herself, and she was not alone. 3 Nexury guards in ceremonial armor flanked her, their faces grim. Jake Morrison, Zara said formally. I must speak with you urgently. Commander Chin straightened. Your Majesty, perhaps this conversation would be better held in more formal surroundings. No, Zara interrupted, her golden eyes never leaving Jake's face. What I have to say is for Jake alone. Commander, please ensure we are not disturbed. Chun hesitated, then nodded and left with the guards. Zara waited until the door sealed before her formal posture crumbled slightly. "There are things I should have told you last night," she said, her 4 hands clasped in what Jake was learning was a sign of distress. "Things that make our courtship more complicated than I allowed you to believe." Jake set down his coffee. "What kind of things?" Zara moved to the viewing port and stared out at the stars. "Do you know why the Nexri Empire has endured for 10,000 years while other civilizations have risen and fallen? Because you're older, more advanced, better organized? Because we are dying." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "What?" Zara turned back to him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked vulnerable. "The Nexri have extended lifespans, but we pay a price for our longevity. Our fertility rates have been declining for millennia. Each generation has fewer children than the last. Our scientists estimate that within 5,000 years, our species will be extinct." Jake sank into his desk chair, trying to process this information. I'm sorry. I had no idea. Very few beings do. It is not something we advertise." Zara moved closer, her expression intense. "For the past 1,000 years, our best scientists have been searching for a solution. They have studied genetics, explored dimensional mechanics, even attempted to manipulate time itself. Nothing has worked. Until now," Jake asked, though he was beginning to suspect where this was going. 3 days ago, my head scientist made a discovery. Human genetic material appears to be compatible with Nexri biology in ways that could revitalize our species. Not just compatible, potentially transformative." Jake's mouth went dry. "And that's why you're interested in me? For breeding purposes?" Zara's face showed genuine hurt. "No, Jake, you must understand. I knew nothing of this research when I first saw you. What I felt, what I sensed in you, had nothing to do with genetics or politics. It was pure emotional resonance." "But it's convenient," Jake said, anger rising in his voice. "The dying alien queen falls for the human, just as her scientists discover humans might save her species." "The timing is unfortunate," Zara admitted. "When my advisor informed me of the discovery this morning, I realized how it would appear. That is why I came to tell you myself, rather than allow you to hear it from others." Jake stood and began pacing his small quarters. "So what happens now? Do I become some kind of royal stud? Father a new hybrid race to save the Nexri?" "That is one possibility," Zara said quietly. "But it is not the only one, and it is not what I want." "What do you want?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I want what I felt last night. The connection, the peace, the possibility of someone who sees me as more than a crown and a responsibility." Jake stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. Despite her imposing height and regal bearing, she looked lost. "How many potential partners have you had?" he asked. "In 3,000 years? Dozens. All political arrangements. All Nexri nobility. All focused on maintaining bloodlines and securing alliances." She met his eyes. "None that I chose for myself." "And me? You, Jake Morrison, are the first being I have met in centuries who made me remember what it feels like to want something for myself rather than for my empire." Jake felt his anger deflating, replaced by something more complex. "But we can't ignore the political implications. Or the genetic thing. No, we cannot." Zara moved to sit across from him, her movements graceful despite her obvious distress. "My council is demanding that I pursue a formal alliance with humanity based on this genetic compatibility. They want me to negotiate a breeding program with your government." "A breeding program?" Jake repeated numbly. "They do not understand that what happened between us last night cannot be replicated through political arrangement. They see only the potential for survival." Jake Estor chimed insistently. Commander Chen's voice came through the comm system. "Your Majesty, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Galactic Council is demanding your immediate presence. The hegemony has called for a formal vote of no confidence in the Nexri Empire." Zara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, she was every inch the queen she was born to be. "I must go. My empire needs me." She stood, then paused at the door. "Jake, whatever you decide about us, please know that last night was real. What I feel for you has nothing to do with genetics or politics. It has everything to do with the fact that for the first time in 3 millennia, I felt like I could simply be Zara, not Queen Zarathia." After she left, Jake sat alone in his quarters, his mind reeling. The crystalline flower on his nightstand pulsed with steady light, responding to his emotional turmoil. An hour later, Dr. Vasquez arrived with her datapad and an expression of barely contained excitement. Jake, I've been analyzing the genetic compatibility data that leaked from the Nexury Research Division. This is incredible. Elena, I'm not sure I want to hear this right now. No, listen. The compatibility isn't just about reproduction. Human and Nexury genetics could potentially enhance each other. Humans might gain extended lifespans and enhanced empathic abilities. Nexury could regain their fertility and develop stronger emotional resilience. Jake looked up. Stronger emotional resilience? Nexury are incredibly empathic, but it makes them vulnerable to emotional overload. Human emotional stability could balance that. Meanwhile, human emotional intensity could help revitalize Nexury passion and creativity, which have apparently been declining along with their fertility. So, it's not just about saving their species. It's about changing both species. Exactly. Jake, this could be the next step in galactic evolution. Not just for Nexury and humans, but for the understanding of how different species can truly unite. Dr. Vasquez left him with even more to think about. Jake spent the rest of the day in his quarters, ignoring the increasingly urgent messages from Station Command. Finally, as the station's artificial evening cycle began, he made a decision. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message to Zura. I need to see you. Privately. I have something to say. Her response came within minutes. Meet me in Shuttle Bay 7 in 1 hour. Come alone. Shuttle Bay 7 was one of the smaller bays, used primarily for maintenance shuttles and emergency vehicles. Jake arrived to find Zara waiting beside a sleek Nexury vessel that seemed to be made of the same crystalline material as her crown. Thank you for coming, she said. I was not certain you would want to see me again. Zara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly. Always. Jake took a deep breath. If your scientist hadn't made that discovery about genetic compatibility, would you still be interested in me? Zara was quiet for a long moment. Yes. Absolutely yes. And if I said I wanted to help your species, but not pursue a personal relationship with you, what would happen? I would be heartbroken, but I would respect your decision and work to arrange whatever your government deemed appropriate. And if I said I wanted a personal relationship with you, but wanted nothing to do with the genetic implications, I would choose you over my species' survival. The simple honesty in her voice took Jake's breath away. You would do that? I've spent 3,000 years serving my empire. I deserve one choice that is purely mine. Jake stepped closer to her. What if there was a third option? What do you mean? What if we pursued our relationship honestly, with no politics and no pressure, and let whatever happens happen naturally? What if we prove that connections between species can be real and meaningful without being calculated or arranged? Zara's golden eyes widened. The council would be furious. They want guaranteed results. Let them be furious. Zara, last night you said you wanted someone who sees you as more than a crown and a responsibility. Well, I see you as Zara, someone intelligent, funny, beautiful, and kind. Someone I want to know better. Someone I'm already falling for. You are. Jake smiled. I spent all day trying to convince myself this was just politics and science. But every time I looked at that flower you gave me, all I could think about was how much I enjoyed talking with you. How much I wanted to see you smile again. Zara stepped closer, and Jake caught that scent of ozone and starflowers. What are you proposing, Jake Morrison? I'm proposing we court each other properly. No political pressure, no genetic manipulation, no diplomatic arrangements. Just two beings who are interested in each other, taking the time to see what develops. And if our relationship leads to children who happen to be genetically beneficial to both our species, then that's a bonus, not the goal. Zara reached out with one of her hands and gently touched his face. Her skin was warm and surprisingly soft. You realize this will complicate everything. The best things usually do. She smiled then, the genuine smile that made his heart skip. Very well, Jake Morrison. I accept your proposal. We will court each other honestly and let the galaxy deal with the implications. There's just one thing, Jake said. Yes. I've never courted an alien queen before. You're going to have to be patient with me. Zara's laughter echoed through the shuttle bay. I have all the time in the universe, Jake Morrison. We both do, as they stood together in the shuttle bay. With the stars visible through the transparent aluminum ports, Jake realized that his life had become something beyond his wildest imagination. And he couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. 3 weeks into their courtship, Jake had settled into a routine that would have seemed impossible a month ago. His mornings were still spent maintaining the station's systems, but his evenings belonged to Zara. They walked through the station's observation decks, shared meals that blended human and Nexary cuisine, and talked about everything from quantum mechanics to ancient poetry. Jake was learning that beneath her royal bearing, Zara had a brilliant mind, a wicked sense of humor, and a deep loneliness that 3,000 years of rule had carved into her soul. She was learning that Jake's quiet strength came from a place of genuine contentment with his role in the universe, something she had never encountered before. The crystalline flower she had given him now bloomed constantly, its light shifting from purple to gold, depending on their emotional state when they were together. Dr. Vasquez had taken to studying it when she thought Jake wasn't looking, muttering about unprecedented bioempathic resonance. But their growing relationship was not developing in a vacuum. The Galactic Council was in chaos. 3 different factions had emerged: those who supported the Human Nexary Alliance, those who opposed it, and those who wanted to exploit it for their own purposes. Trade agreements were being renegotiated, military alliances questioned, and ancient treaties examined for relevant clauses. The human government on Earth was sending a diplomatic team to assess the situation, which Jake interpreted as figure out how to profit from this. The Nexary High Council was pressuring Zara to formalize the relationship and begin genetic compatibility testing immediately. Through it all, Jake tried to focus on Zara herself, rather than the political maelstrom swirling around them. It was getting harder. The hegemony has issued an ultimatum, Commander Chen told him as he finished his shift one evening. They're demanding that you submit to genetic testing to prove that human Nexary compatibility actually exists, or they'll declare the entire courtship a political fraud. Jake wiped grease from his hands and closed his toolkit. What happens if I refuse? They'll call for economic sanctions against both Earth and the Nexary Empire. Given that the hegemony controls the primary trade routes in 3 sectors, that could be devastating. And if I agree to the testing, then you're legitimizing their right to interfere in a private relationship. Plus, if the tests prove compatibility, they'll demand that any resulting children be raised in neutral territory to prevent either species from gaining an advantage. Jake felt a familiar headache building. What does Zara think? She's furious, but she's also a politician. She knows that sometimes personal desires have to be balanced against greater responsibilities. That evening, Jake found Zara in her temporary quarters, staring out at the stars with an expression he'd never seen before, utterly defeated. The High Council met today, she said without turning around. They've given me an ultimatum as well. Jake moved to stand beside her at the viewing port. What kind of ultimatum? Formalize our courtship into a political alliance within the next 10 days, or they will vote to remove me from power and choose a new queen who will be more focused on the Empire's needs. They can do that. It has never been done before, but the law allows for it in cases where a monarch is deemed unfit to rule. Zara's voice was hollow. They argue that my personal feelings are compromising my judgment. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. That's not fair. Fair is a luxury that royalty rarely enjoys. Zara finally turned to look at him. Jake, I have been thinking. Perhaps it would be better if we ended this courtship now, before more damage is done. Is that what you want? What I want has never mattered. What matters is the good of my people. Jake stepped closer and gently took her hands. Zara, look at me. She met his eyes reluctantly. What you want matters to me, and I think it should matter to your people too. A queen who sacrifices her own happiness for duty is admirable, but a queen who forgets that she's also a person with the right to choose her own path might not be the leader her people need. The High Council disagrees. Then, maybe the High Council is wrong. Before Zara could respond, Jake's communicator chirped. The message was from Station Commander Torres. All senior staff report to Briefing Room 1 immediately. Priority Alpha. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself in a room filled with the station's senior officers, diplomatic staff, and representatives from a dozen species. At the head of the table stood Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony, a tall, insectoid being whose compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. "Thank you all for coming," Ambassador Krell began, his voice carrying the distinctive clicking undertones of his species. "I have come to resolve this unfortunate situation once and for all." Commander Torres leaned forward. "What kind of resolution are you proposing, Ambassador?" "A challenge," Krell replied. "The Hegemony will withdraw all objections to the human Nexary courtship if the human Jake Morrison can prove his worthiness according to ancient galactic law." Jake felt every eye in the room turn to him. "What kind of challenge?" "Trial by ordeal," Krell said with obvious satisfaction. "An ancient tradition that allows a being to prove their worth through a series of tests. Physical prowess, mental acuity, and spiritual strength." Dr. Vasquez spoke up from the back of the room. "Ambassador, trial by ordeal hasn't been invoked in over 1,000 years. Most species consider it barbaric. But it remains legally valid according to the Galactic Codex," Krell replied. "And it would settle this matter definitively. If the human succeeds, his worthiness to court Nexary royalty is established beyond question. If he fails, Commander Chen asked. "Then the courtship ends and both species agree to pursue the genetic compatibility research through proper diplomatic channels rather than romantic entanglement." Silence filled the room. Jake's mind raced as he processed the implications. This was clearly a trap. The Hegemony wouldn't propose something unless they were confident of the outcome. "What do the tests involve?" he asked. 3 trials, Krell explained. "The trial of strength, to prove physical worthiness. The trial of wisdom, to prove mental worthiness. The trial of spirit, to prove worthiness of character. Each trial will be designed by representatives of different galactic civilizations to ensure fairness. And if I refuse to participate, then the Galactic Council will consider the courtship a political manipulation and act accordingly." Jake looked around the room. Commander Torres looked grim. Dr. Vasquez was frantically consulting her datapad. Commander Chun was shaking her head slightly. But it was the expression on Zara's face that decided him. She looked stricken, clearly believing that this was the end of everything they had been building together. "I'll do it," Jake said. The room erupted in startled voices. Krell's antennae twitched with what might have been surprise. "Jake, you don't have to," Commander Torres began. "Yes, I do," Jake said, standing. "Ambassador Krell, I accept your challenge. When do we start?" "The trials will begin in 3 days," Krell replied. "That will give the Council time to design appropriate tests and assemble the necessary officials." After the meeting disbanded, Jake found himself alone with Zara in the corridor outside the briefing room. "You should not have agreed to this," she said, her 4 hands clenched in distress. "Why not?" "Because the Hegemony does not propose challenges they expect to lose. They must be confident that you will fail." Jake took her hands in his. "Zara, do you remember what you said about sensing peace in me when we first met?" "Yes. That peace comes from knowing who I am and being comfortable with it. I'm not a warrior or a genius or a saint. I'm just a guy who fixes broken things and tries to do the right thing. If that's not enough to be worthy of you, then maybe I'm not the right person for you anyway." Zara's golden eyes filled with what might have been tears. "Jake Morrison, you are exactly the right person for me. That is what terrifies me." "Then, trust me," Jake said. "Trust us. 3 days from now, I'm going to face whatever test they throw at me, and I'm going to do my best. Whatever happens, at least we'll know we didn't give up without a fight." Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then, she smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her all evening. "Very well," she said. "If you're willing to fight for us, then I will stand beside you, whatever the outcome. Together?" "Together." As they walked back toward their quarters, Jake tried not to think about what the trials might involve. Whatever the Hegemony had planned, he would face it as himself. Jake Morrison, maintenance technician, who had somehow captured the heart of the most powerful woman in the galaxy. The crystalline flower in his quarters was glowing brighter than ever, responding to his determination and Zara's renewed hope. 3 days until everything changed again. The next morning, Jake woke to find a message waiting for him from an unexpected source, his father back on Earth. "Hey son," the recorded message began. "Heard about your situation from the news feeds. Sounds like you're about to face some tough tests. Just remember what I taught you about fixing things sometimes you have to take them apart completely before you can understand how to put them back together properly. You got this, Jake. Make us proud. Jake smiled as he deleted the message. His father was right, as usual. Sometimes the only way to fix something was to understand it completely, even if that meant taking it apart first. In 3 days, he would find out exactly what he was made of. And maybe, just maybe, he would prove that a simple human maintenance worker could be worthy of an alien queen's love. The trial arena had been constructed in the station's largest cargo bay, transformed overnight into something that looked like it belonged on an ancient world rather than a modern space station. Representatives from dozens of species filled the viewing galleries, their attention focused on the central platform where Jake would face his tests. Jake stood in the preparation chamber, dressed in simple athletic clothing, trying to calm his nerves. Dr. Vasquez had spent the previous 2 days briefing him on everything she could discover about historical trials by ordeal, but the information was fragmentary at best. The good news, she had told him, is that these trials are supposed to test character as much as ability. The bad news is that character means different things to different species. A chime indicated it was time. Jake stepped through the energy barrier that separated the preparation chamber from the arena proper and was immediately struck by the noise. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy, all watching him. At the center of the arena stood 3 platforms, each representing one of the trials he would face. Ambassador Krell waited beside the first platform, along with representatives from the species that had designed each test. Jake Morrison of Earth, Krell announced, his voice amplified throughout the arena. You stand before this assembly to prove your worthiness through trial by ordeal. Do you accept this challenge freely and without coercion? I do, Jake replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Then, let the trial of strength begin. The first platform rose from the arena floor, revealing what looked like a complex mechanical puzzle combined with physical obstacles. Standing beside, it was General Thax of the Korthali Empire, a species known for their incredible physical strength and military prowess. The trial of strength, General Thax rumbled in a voice like grinding stone, is not merely about physical power. It tests your ability to overcome obstacles through determination, strategy, and endurance. The platform before Jake contained a series of interlocking mechanical components, each weighing several hundred pounds. The objective was clear. He needed to move the components into a specific configuration that would open a sealed chamber containing the key to the next trial. Jake approached the first component, a massive crystalline cylinder that needed to be moved to the opposite side of the platform. He wrapped his arms around it and lifted, immediately feeling the strain in his back and legs. The component was heavier than anything he'd ever attempted to move. As he struggled with the weight, Jake heard murmurs from the crowd. Some were clearly betting against him. Others seemed surprised that he was attempting a direct approach rather than looking for mechanical assistance. But Jake had spent years moving heavy equipment in awkward spaces. He knew that sometimes the direct approach was the only one that worked. He adjusted his grip, engaged his core muscles the way his father had taught him, and began the slow process of moving the cylinder across the platform. It took him nearly 20 minutes to position all 7 components correctly, and by the end, his shirt was soaked with sweat and his muscles screamed in protest. But when the final component locked into place, the sealed chamber opened with a satisfying click. The trial of strength is complete, General Thax announced, and Jake caught what might have been approval in the alien's voice. The human has demonstrated that strength comes in many forms. The second platform rose as the first ascended. This one was occupied by Professor Veltar of the Mentari Collective, a species known for their incredible intelligence and analytical abilities. The trial of wisdom, Professor Veltar announced, her telepathic voice resonating directly in Jake's mind, tests not merely knowledge, but the ability to understand, adapt, and solve problems under pressure. The second trial was a complex 3-dimensional puzzle that seemed to shift and change as Jake watched. The objective was to guide a beam of light through a series of crystalline lenses and mirrors to illuminate a target at the center of the construct. Jake studied the puzzle for several minutes, noting how the components moved in response to his touch. It reminded him of the complex diagnostic systems he worked with every day, multiple variables that all affected each other, requiring him to think several steps ahead. But this puzzle was different. Every time he successfully aligned one section, Another would shift slightly, forcing him to compensate. It was like trying to repair a system that actively resisted his efforts. Then, Jake realized something. The puzzle wasn't fighting him, it was teaching him. Each shift showed him a new aspect of how the system worked. Instead of fighting the changes, he began to work with them, using the system's own movement to help guide the light beam. The solution, when it came, was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than forcing the light to follow a specific path, Jake had learned to create a path that the light wanted to follow. The beam found its target, and the chamber containing the second key opened. Impressive. Professor Veltar's mental voice carried notes of genuine surprise. The human demonstrates wisdom through adaptation rather than domination. The trial of wisdom is complete. As the third platform rose, Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This trial was different from the others, simpler in appearance, but somehow more ominous. A single figure waited beside it. Mystic Chandria of the Ethereal Order, a species that existed partially outside normal space-time, and were rumored to see directly into the souls of other beings. The trial of spirit. Mystic Chandria spoke with a voice like cosmic wind, cannot be observed by others. What occurs here is between you and the truth of your own nature. Jake approached the platform, which contained only a simple crystalline chair surrounded by a circle of softly glowing stones. As he sat down, the arena around him faded away, replaced by a space that seemed to exist outside of normal reality. Jake Morrison, Charandria's voice, came from everywhere and nowhere. Why do you seek to court Queen Zarathia? The question hit him with unexpected force, and Jake realized that lying was impossible in this space. Because I love her. Love is a word used by many beings to justify many actions. What do you mean when you say love? Jake felt his deepest thoughts and feelings being examined, and instead of resisting, he opened himself to the scrutiny. I mean that her happiness matters more to me than my own. That I want to know everything about her, not just the queen, but the person underneath. That I want to be someone she can trust completely, someone who sees her for who she really is. And what do you see when you look at her? Someone incredibly strong who's been forced to carry that strength alone for too long. Someone brilliant and funny and kind who's never been allowed to just be herself. Someone who deserves to be loved for who she is, not what she represents. Your species is young and short-lived. Hers is ancient and nearly immortal. How can such a pairing succeed? I don't know if it can, Jake admitted, but I know it's worth trying. Maybe the difference in our lifespans doesn't matter if we focus on making the time we have meaningful. Your courtship could change the balance of power across the galaxy. Do you accept that responsibility? I accept that our relationship might have consequences we can't foresee, but I refuse to let politics dictate who I love or how I love them. And if you must choose between Zara's happiness and the survival of her species, this question cut deeper than the others, touching on his deepest fears. Then I hope I'm strong enough to help her make whatever choice she needs to make, even if it breaks my heart. The space around him shimmered, and for a moment Jake saw himself as Charandria saw him. Not just his external appearance, but the entire structure of his character, his fears and hopes and dreams laid bare. Jake Morrison of Earth, Charandria said finally, your spirit is true. The trial of spirit is complete. Jake found himself back in the arena, the noise of the crowd washing over him like a wave. He looked up at the viewing gallery and saw Zara watching him with an expression of pride and love that made his heart soar. Ambassador Krell stepped forward, his compound eyes reflecting the arena lights. Jake Morrison, you have completed all 3 trials. The tests were designed to be challenging for any being, regardless of species. Your success proves your worthiness beyond question. The crowd erupted in noise, some cheering, some clearly displeased with the outcome. But Jake only had eyes for Zara as she descended from the viewing gallery to meet him on the arena floor. You magnificent, impossible human, she said, embracing him with all 4 arms. I was terrified the entire time. So was I, Jake admitted, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. That is because you were being yourself, she said. Exactly as I told you to be. Ambassador Krell approached them, and Jake was surprised to see what might have been respect in his alien features. The hegemony honors the outcome of these trials, Krell announced. We withdraw all objections to your courtship. Thank you, Jake said. But can I ask you something? What? The trials weren't designed to make me fail, were they? They were designed to prove that I was worthy. Krell's antennae twitched, and what Jake had learned was the hegemony equivalent of a smile. The hegemony has existed for 8,000 years, young human. We have learned to recognize genuine character when we see it. We merely needed to provide you with an opportunity to demonstrate it to the galaxy. As the arena began to empty and the platforms were lowered back into storage, Jake and Zara stood together in the center of the space, holding each other. So what happens now? Jake asked. Now we continue our courtship properly, Zara said. Without political pressure, without genetic manipulation, without interference from anyone else. And the compatibility research will proceed through proper diplomatic channels, as it should have from the beginning. But our relationship will develop on its own terms. Jake smiled. You know, a month ago, my biggest worry was whether the water recyclers could handle the increased load from the diplomatic conference. And now I'm wondering if you'd like to see Earth sometime. I think you'd like my hometown. It's nothing fancy, but there's something peaceful about it. Zara's smile could have powered the entire station. I would love that, Jake Morrison. I would love that very much. As they walked back toward their quarters, passing the crystalline flower that now glowed with steady golden light, Jake realized that his life had become something he never could have imagined. He was still a maintenance technician who fixed broken things. He just expanded his definition to include diplomatic crises and interspecies relationships. 6 months later, Jake stood on a hill overlooking his hometown, watching Zara experience Earth rain for the first time. Her laughter as the drops touched her skin was the most beautiful sound in any galaxy. The genetic compatibility research had indeed proven successful, leading to new medical advances for both species. The political alliance between Earth and the Nexri Empire had brought prosperity and protection to both civilizations. 3 other interspecies couples had formed in the wake of their example, proving that connection could transcend biology and politics. But none of that mattered as much as the simple fact that Zara was happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way she told him she hadn't been in centuries. Jake Morrison, she said, taking his hand as they stood in the rain together, I have a question for you. What's that? In human culture, when 2 beings wish to formalize their commitment to each other, what is the traditional ceremony called? Jake's heart skipped a beat. Marriage. It's called marriage. Would you do me the honor of marrying me, Jake Morrison? Not as a political alliance or genetic experiment, but simply because I love you and want to spend whatever time we have together. Jake turned to face her, rain running down both their faces. Zara, are you proposing to me? I am indeed proposing to you, my dear human who fixes broken things. Will you marry me? Jake's answer was lost in their kiss, but the golden light that suddenly blazed from the crystalline flower in Zara's hair was answer enough. A year later, at their wedding ceremony attended by representatives from across the galaxy, Dr. Vasquez would note in her official report that the bioempathic resonance between the couple had created an entirely new spectrum of light frequencies, effectively proving that love was indeed a measurable force in the universe. But Jake, standing at the altar and looking into Zara's golden eyes as she promised to love him across all the years they would share, already knew that some things didn't need to be measured to be real. After all, he was pretty good at fixing things that seemed impossible to repair.